Hey guys, welcome to Chapter 27, Your Family and Your Human, Part 2. I guess Celestia and Luna told Cadence about this occurrence, and I guess they're gonna tell her family now? I'm not sure. Anyways, let's just hop right into it. Your Family and Your Human, Part 2. My restful sleep was interrupted unexpectedly by a beam of bright sunlight assaulting my face. I winced in pain as my hand came up to protect my eye as I lay there, trying to figure out what was happening. A giggle beside me let me know that I was not alone in the living room. Tentatively cracking my eye open again, I glanced to my left to see Twilight standing there with a smile on her face, looking at me as a halo of sunlight shone down on her from the uncovered window. My gaze rose slightly as I looked at the clock on the wall behind her. 8:30 in the morning. It's too damn early for this. Good morning, Twilight said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her horn glowed as she closed the blinds partially, blocking the sunlight that was striking my face. It's time to get up, sleepyhead. Closing my eye, I pulled the covers over my head, growling quietly. I snuggled back into the warmth that the blankets provided, hoping that sleep might forgive my transgression and welcome me back with open arms. However, it was not to be. Come on, I heard Twilight murmur, gently shaking me with a hoof. You can't lie around all day. Watch me, I huffed, pulling the blankets tighter around me. Come on, breakfast is almost ready. Wake me up when breakfast has become lunch. This earned a snort from Twilight, and even though I couldn't see her, I knew that she was rolling her eyes at me. Come on, you need to get up. Is Spike up yet? This is Spike's day off. He gets to sleep in, Twilight said. We, however, have stuff to do today, so you get up. So up you get. It's my day off too. You don't have a job. It's always your day off now. Wait, what? You don't have a job. It's always your day off. Now get up. I'm not gonna tell you again, Twilight said, her tone indicating that there would be no further argument. With a heavy sigh, I relented in my opinion. It was too early in the morning to be having a mental war with Twilight. You sound just like my mother. I sat up with a groan, the blankets falling down around my shoulders. Running a hand through my shoulder-length, unkempt hair, I yawned loudly, my jaw popping slightly as I did so. Twilight just laughed again before turning and heading down the stairs. I watched her flanks sway back and forth as she walked, my tired mind not processing what I was staring at until she was already down the stairs. Great, I thought, as my cheeks heated up slightly. Now I'm starting to become attracted to them. I slowly stood up, my body protesting as I did so. I would have liked nothing more than to fall back to sleep, but I had learned that long ago that when Twilight said it was time to get up, you got up. That mare could be scary sometimes. I shuffled towards the stairs, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Descending the steps, I reached the bottom just in time to see Twilight close the front door. The mail hovering beside her in her magical grasp, as she looked through the pile of letters and magazines, I shuffled my way into the kitchen, doing my best imitation of a zombie. The smell of cooking food, especially that of pancakes, assaulted my nose, making my mouth water. I wasn't sure who the better cook was, Twilight or Spike, but either way I got free, delicious food. I took my spot at the kitchen table, my chair squeaking quietly as I sat down. Glancing over the stove, I watched with slight amusement as a spatula floated around the stove's range, flipping pancakes whenever they were finished cooking. It was always fascinating to watch Twilight cook like this, even if it was only for simple things, and only for a short period of time. If she did it for too long, there was a good chance that she would ruin the meal or set something on fire. Turning my gaze from the spatula, I rested my head on the table and closed my eyes. You know, you wouldn't be this tired in the morning if you went to bed earlier, I heard Twilight say as she walked into the kitchen. I grunted at her, refusing to raise my head, earning me a giggle from her in response. I listened as she walked around the kitchen. Her hood was making a signature clip-clop noise as she walked across the wooden floor. It was surprisingly relaxing. Are humans from your world nocturnal? Twilight joked as she rummaged through the cabinets. I shook my head, my forehead still pressed against the table's surface. After several seconds, I realized that she wasn't looking at me, so I was focused to actually move my arms. No, but typically humans around my age stay up later in the night than others. There was a brief moment of silence as Twilight looked over at me. At least, I think she did. It's hard to tell when your eyes are closed. Why is that? Twilight asked, the sound of plates clinging together and resuming. Does it have something to do with your culture? I started lifting my hand and finally opening my eyes. I looked over at Twilight, who was busy stacking pancakes onto a couple of plates. No, that's not the reason. Then why would somebody of your age have a different sleep pattern than other age groups? She asked as she pulled the syrup of the pantry. I'm capping it. She quickly covered the 2 stacks of pancakes in the sticky substance. I chewed on the inside of my cheek as I racked my half-awakened brain, picking through my mental files of random facts I know. No one really knows, I began as she made her way over to the table, 2 plates stacked high with pancakes floating behind her head. but some scientists believe that it's natural in origin. Typically, infants tend to sleep whenever they want, but young children tend to go to bed early and wake up early. As they age, they tend to stay up later and later. This trend continues until around middle age, then it starts to decline again. This usually means that elders tend to have the same sleep schedule as young children. It was hard to explain to her in hoof language, as half the words I wanted to use don't exist in Equestria. Interesting, Twilight said, sliding a plate in front of me. I immediately picked up my fork and began digging into the fluffy goodness that was pancakes. I wonder if the same can be said for humans here in Equestria. She stared off into the distance for several seconds before shaking her head. That's an experiment for another day, for a different day, I heard her mutter. Looking down at her breakfast, she picked up a fork and began eating. While I was attempting to shove entire pancakes into my face hole, she ate daintily, taking small bites and chewing thoroughly. So, what's the plan today? I asked as I tried to chew the 5 pounds of pancake now occupying my mouth. Twilight glanced up at me, an amused expression on her face. You forgot what day it is, didn't you? She said, laughing softly. I thought about it for a brief moment, then shrugged my shoulders out and continued chewing. This just caused her to smile to widen. Well, Luna might have let it slip to some pony that you're actually intelligent, and that some pony might have told her husband, and her husband may have asked his mother about it, and his mother might have sent a letter to me about it. Yeah, boy, I knew it was gonna be Luna. I knew it was gonna be Luna Cadence or something going on, because princesses technically share knowledge with each other. Even though Twilight's not really on that level yet. Long story short, she said, taking another small bite of her breakfast, we're going to my parents' house for dinner. Again. And they know you're intelligent this time. I inhaled sharply and immediately began choking as some pancake decided that my lungs would be a lovely place to visit this time of year. Coughing and sputtering, I pounded on my chest with my fist, trying to clear my windpipe. Twilight just stared at me, a smug expression on her face. I slowly turned to worry, however, as I continued to hook up a lung. Are you alright? She asked, setting down her fork and starting to rise. I waved a hand at her, and she slowly sat back down. I eventually was able to extract the bits of food, and I took a quick swig of orange juice before staring at Twilight in horror. That's today? I asked. The smile returned to her face, and she nodded as she resumed eating. I leaned back in my chair and groaned. I glared down at the remainder of my pancakes, pouting slightly. I stayed that way for several minutes. Oh, come on. Come now. Oh, come now, Twilight chided as she slowly finished her food. It won't be that bad. You already technically met my mom, Cadence and Shining. You just have to meet my dad and have all of them ask you a ton of questions. I grumbled, still staring. All I gotta say, Twilight, he has answered so many questions from you when you found out and when everybody else found out. Pretty sure he has answered every question in the damn book. Anyways, let's continue this. Okay. Alright, where am I? Okay. Have them ask you a ton of questions. I grumbled, still glaring at my food. Eventually, I looked up at Twilight, still pouting slightly. What's wrong? She asked. Your brother's gonna beat me up again? I sighed, quivering my lower lip as I looked at her. This earned me a smack on the back of the head via Twilight's magic. I chuckled slightly as I rubbed the sore spot. Just be on your best behavior, and I'm sure that nothing bad will happen, she said, picking her plate up in her magic. Standing up from the table, she carried the dirty dish over to the sink, stabbing the remainder of my stack of pancakes with my fork. I crammed them into my mouth, chewing them happily. I sit and also brought my dishes to the sink. My back cracked several times as I stretched before turning to look at Twilight. Have you already showered today? I asked, stifling a yawn. I took care of it before starting breakfast, Twilight called out as she walked into the other room. I followed her into the main room of the library, only to see that she was already seated in a chair, reading. I paused and glanced back into the kitchen before looking back at Twilight. There had only been 10 seconds between the time she left the kitchen and when I did, so how did she get there so fast? Deciding that it was best to just accept the weirdness that came with living with a magical being, I turned and headed towards the stairs. I'm going to go get cleaned up, then, I sighed. Don't take too long, she said, not looking up from her book. We need to be at the train station in an hour and a half, I grunted, then continued up the stairs. I'm hoping there's not a bad experience going on here. Entering the bathroom, I shut and locked the door behind me. I approached the mirror and gazed at my reflection. The face that gazed back at me was so different from what I looked like when I first arrived in Equestria that if I had actually gone back home, I doubt that any of my friends or family would recognize me. My dirty blonde hair, which used to be a cut short, was now shorter length. Strands hung across my face and in front of my eyes. I had a scraggly beard that gave me a haggard appearance. My skin was darker, with no video games to keep me inside and away from the sun. My once pale skin had become tan. I had a large scar running across my face, the white line standing out against my skin as it went from my left cheek over my nose and across the bottom of my right eye, which was milky white and useless. And somebody is yelling for somebody in the background, and I am getting a little bit annoyed. Anyways, all in all, I looked like a completely different person than the slightly overweight college student that was dropped into a desert 6 months ago. Still staring at the man in the mirror, I opened up one of the drawers under the sink and pulled out the straight razor that Twilight had given me. Since I'm going to meet Twilight's parents, I thought, thumbing the edge of the blade, I should probably look presentable. Turning the faucet on, I splashed water onto my face before lifting the razor and placing the cold blade against my skin. Half an hour later, I wandered out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around my waist, drying off my head with another one, rubbing absentmindedly at my now smooth face. I slowly made my way back to the couch that had become my official bed. Tossing the towel aside, I reached behind the couch and pulled out one of the new sets of clothing that Rarity had made for me. The shirt was a dark lavender color, almost the same as Twilight's mane and tail, with her cutie mark emblazoned on the back. It was made out of a soft material that was extremely comfortable and, according to Rarity, was tear resistant. Rarity had even made me a long-sleeved version of the shirt for when the weather got colder. How would this be tear resistant? I want you to try this. I want him to test this shirt. Just go do your nonsense. I want to see this shirt rip, honestly. If Rarity says it's tear resistant, it probably is. But I want to know its durability. The pants were made out of a black material that reminded me of sweatpants. It too had Twilight's cutie mark stitched onto them, located on both thighs. When I asked Rarity why she had put them there, she had told me that it was to imitate human brands, without having to go through the horrid process of the real thing. Oh, I wonder if I could sell those to the other human owners, Rarity had squealed. It could be the next trend. Rarity, being innovative. I whistled softly as I pulled the clothing on. The mare knows her stuff. The clothing fit impressively. The shirt was slightly baggy, but I didn't mind. Grabbing my bags, I held my notebooks and charcoal sticks. I exited the room, picking up my towels along the way, throwing them into the laundry chute as I walked past. I headed down the stairs. Twilight was still reading, humming softly as she turned the pages of the magic. As I descended the stairs, she looked up at me and did a double take. She pouted, looking up at me with sad eyes. I glanced down at myself before looking up at her, confused. What? Oh, I kind of like the beard, she said, her voice trailing off as a small blush spread across her face. I chuckled as I reached over and ruffled her mane with my hand. Her hair flicked as my fingers brushed against it. Don't worry, it'll grow back, I sighed as she closed her book and placed it back on her desk. I'll make sure that I just trim it next time. Why did you shave it? Why did you shave anyway? She asked as she stood and grabbed her saddlebags. Placing them across her back, she fastened the straps. Wanted to look presentable for dinner? Ah, Twilight cooed, looking up at me with a smug expression. You want to make a good impression. You want to make a good impression on my parents. I closed my eyes and stuck my nose in the air, huffing indignantly. I don't care. Okay, what? What just happened here? I care not where you coming ponies stink. I don't need any ponies' approval. Twilight just giggled, pressing a hoof to her mouth. I kept my pose for several seconds before dropping the act. Ready to go, boss? I asked as I double-checked my bag straps. Yes, I've already left Spike a note, so we're good to go. Heading towards the door, I slipped on a pair of simple flip-flops. I had made them myself with some help from Rarity in order to have something to wear on my feet. With how long I had been walking around Equestria in bare feet, my soles had long since become calloused. I don't know how to say that. It still hurt when I stepped on a random root or sharp rock, though, so I decided that I wanted to do something simple to protect them. Grasping the door handle, I opened the door for Twilight. She flashed me a grateful smile as she passed. Taking one last glance around the library, I turned and followed Twilight out into the daylight. Okay. And now, some time has passed. Probably walk into it, and it was this. Of course, he wants to look presentable. Like, I don't know why, but like he's like you're his owner. He just wants to make sure like that they accept him and let him stay with you. I'm pretty sure that's the main reason. Anyways, let's hop right into it. You're telling me you've never seen that before? What, ponies spontaneously bursting into song at random? No, I can't say that I have. Twilight looked up at me as if I had two heads. We were walking through the streets of Canterlot, heading towards the home of Twilight's parents. We had arrived in Canterlot about mid-afternoon and had just recently passed by the marketplace where a group of ponies were singing a song, complete with music. That wouldn't bug me except for several key things. One, there was no source for the music. It was coming out of the thin air, no instruments, no musicians. 2, everyone seemed to know exactly when to pitch in and what their lines were. There were even a couple of duets in the song, and nobody messed up once. And 3, everyone had gone back to what they were originally doing, as if nothing strange had just happened. According to Twilight, this was a normal occurrence in Equestria. I'm calling bullshit. Then again, it still wouldn't be the strangest thing I've ever seen living here. That honor goes to Pinkie Pie. I will never truly understand how she got 3 circus tents, 2 banquet tables covered in food, and a large swimming pool into her party cannon. You've been here for this long, and you haven't seen or experienced the music of harmony? Music of harmony? Nope, can't say I have. You didn't have anything like that back? Oh wait, you didn't have magic on your world. We have something similar to that, although it involves people spending several months learning the words and where they need to be at that time. We call them musicals, and they're quite popular, although none of them happen spontaneously out of nowhere. Interesting. A world with no magic has organized moments of musical harmony, Twilight said, rubbing her chin with the tip of her wing as she walked. She cocked her head to the side as she mused. I guess compared to that, our way seems a little bizarre, doesn't it? She chuckled. You have no idea, I replied with a smirk. Is she, at least they're just talking like, well, she's a princess, so I'm pretty sure no one's going to question her. Okay, I have no idea, I replied with a smirk. You wouldn't happen to remember any of them, would you? Twilight asked, looking up at me with the big puppy dog eyes. I couldn't help the barking laugh that escaped my mouth, sound causing a nearby stallion to jump and look at me in shock. Grinning down at Twilight, I narrowed my eyes playfully. I might remember 1 or 2 of them. The look of joy that spread across her face was too cute. She grinned up at me, her eyes sparkling as she squealed happily. This is much ease. Music from another world, she squeaked, her wings fluttering happily. Not to mention it's your world's version of our music of harmony. Oh, this is so exciting. As she continued her frenetic ramblings, I was mentally debating with myself at what point her heart would give out due to excitement. You do realize that there are some things you won't understand due to different cultures and history as well as language, right? Twilight glared up at me and playfully, a small smile on her face. It doesn't matter, she said. It's the thought that counts. An ear-pitching shriek tore through the air, cutting Twilight off. Both of us instantly covered our ears as the strange, otherworldly cry caused everyone to cringe in pain. Blinking back tears, I looked around trying to locate the source of the scream. Suddenly, Twilight pointed a hoof behind me, her face screwed up, glancing over my shoulder. My eyes widened as I caught sight of the disturbance. A human stood in one of the side streets, mouth open wide as he wailed loudly. His hair was hung around his face in wispy black strands. He wore tattered clothing, the rags were hanging off of him like wrappings on a mummy. From the skin that was visible, it was obvious that he was sickly. His ribs clearly visible. On his thigh was branded 3 roses. 3 roses? Man, these brands. I want to know what cutie marks these come from. It was his face, however, that was the most shocking feature. It was twisted in pure, unadulterated rage as spittle flew from his mouth. Fire burned in his eyes as he raised a hand and pointed a long, decrepit finger at me. He held the pose for a moment before turning and sprinting down the side street, still shrieking to wake the dead. Why was he pointing at you, though? A shocked silence fell across the street, everyone just staring at where the human had once stood. Some ponies huddled together, confused at what had happened, while others just held their heads in their hooves, painting expressions on their face. In the distance, we could see a group of guards, drawn by the unholy shriek, galloping towards us, their golden armor clattering as they ran. Okay, why would somebody just... Alright, Discord, you son of a gun. I was too stunned to move, images of the pit flashing in my mind, the tortured screams of the humans filling my ears. The scar on my chest twinged slightly. I could slowly feel myself tensing, getting ready to run somewhere, anywhere but here. I was about to bolt when someone spoke up beside me, causing me to pause. What was that? I glanced down at Twilight, who was shakily getting back to her hooves. Her ears were flattening against her head, her eyes watering slightly. Her whole body was trembling, and she was breathing heavily. I relaxed slightly at the sight of her. Calm down, Max. Twilight's here, which means if something bad happens, she can help. Have you ever heard a human sound like that before? She asked, looking up at me, running a shaky hand through my hair. I took a few seconds to compose myself before I replied. What? Like nails on chalkboard? She nodded, rubbing a hoof in her ear. No, never. We both stared down the side street as the guards began investigating. Some talking to the surrounding ponies, others heading down the alleyway after the human. Max, have you ever seen that human before here or in Ponyville? Twilight asked softly, moving to stand next to me. She leaned into my leg and took comfort in her presence. That whole ordeal had startled me horribly, and my heart was currently trying to break free of its bony cage. No, she wrinkled her nose, looking like she had smelled something offensive. Well, he seemed to know you, she said. It was pretty clear who he was pointing at. I glanced down at her out of the corner of my eye, swallowing thickly. You saw that too? Yes, and it's that fact that's troubling me. I chewed on my cheek as my mind raced. Dozens of thoughts rushed through my head as my heart rate slowly returned to normal. I just shrugged my shoulders, turned, and began walking again, my legs trembling slightly. I wouldn't worry about it too much, I sighed as Twilight slowly fell into step beside me, looking back over her shoulder at the side street. It was probably a territorial thing, I hope. How can you be so calm about this? She asked, her voice tense. I snorted softly as I walked. I'm not. I just want to get away from here as quickly as possible. That was not a typical human behavior, and it was directed at you. Something is wrong here. We should go investigate. Nope, I sighed and continued to walk down the street. We have dinner with your family to get to. We'll worry about this later. But he'll be long gone by then, Twilight huffed, glaring at me. I stopped and turned to look at her. Did you happen to get a good look at him? Yeah, why? Twilight asked, blinking up at me. Did you happen to get a good look at his thighs? No, not really, she said, scratching up in her face in confusion. What does that have to do with anything? He was branded with 3 roses, I replied, which means he has an owner. We'll go to dinner with your family now, and then afterwards you can send your guards to track down the owner and get your answers. Besides, there are guards investigating it right now. If they catch him, then that's that. Plus, I don't want to deal with an angry human again, even with Twilight at my side, I added silently, shivering as I remembered a mass of muscles descending upon me with a murder in its eyes. Twilight just blinked up at me, a blank look on her face. I guess you're right, she said, slowly chewing on her bottom lip. She sounded unconvinced, but let it go. Although she did walk closer to me than before as we headed down the roads towards her parents' house, I couldn't help but glance back at the alleyway once more, a troubled thought still running through my mind. Twilight was still lost in thought when we arrived at our destination that she didn't realize we were both standing on the front step. I watched her over for several minutes as she muttered inaudibly to herself, her eyes darting back and forth as she mulled over what had happened earlier. Even when I waved my hand in front of her face, she didn't seem to notice. I leaned back, chewing on the inside of my cheek as I considered my next move. Slowly, my eyes drifted up to the door knocker, shrugging my shoulders. I reached up and, grasping the knocker in my hand, banged 3 times out on the door. The sound of muffled footsteps grew louder before the door handle was wrapped in a magical glow, and the door swung open. Standing there, looking at us, was Twilight's mother. Her lavender mane, striped with white, was similar to Twilight's in style. The only difference was that her mother's curled slightly near the end. Her coat was a milky white with 3 purple stars upon her flank. Her fetlocks were longer than her daughter's, but she kept them neat and trimmed. She stood slightly taller than Twilight, if only by a couple of inches. Comparing the two, you could see the family resemblance. If I had been colorblind, it would have been looking like an older version of Twilight, except with no wings. Twilight, so glad you can make it, hon, her mother said, smiling at her daughter. Twilight didn't say anything. She just continued to stand there, muttering to herself. The smile slowly left her mother's face, and then she cocked her head to the side. Twilight, sweetheart, are you alright? When Twilight didn't reply, she turned and glanced up at me in confusion. She began, but I held up a finger, silencing her. She raised an eyebrow as I slowly reached over and flicked Twilight's ear with my finger. The action had the desired effect. Twilight jumped with a yelp, immediately clasping a hoof to her ear as she glared up at me. What was that for? She grumbled. I just pointed at her mother, who was watching the whole scene with a strange look on her face. When Twilight saw her mother standing there, a small blush appeared on her cheeks, and she smiled sheepishly at her. Sorry about that. Kind of got lost in thought. I could see that, her mother replied, her eyes glancing back and forth between the both of us. Is everything all right, dear? Yeah, just some odd activity from a human on our way here, Twilight replied, adjusting her wings into a more comfortable position. Nothing to worry about, if you say so. Her mother turned to look me in the eye. I noticed instantly that she had deep blue eyes which seemed to radiate motherly love and kindness. You must be Max, she said, smiling nervously up at me. I gave her a quick bob of my head, a small smile on my face. You can understand what I'm saying, right? Twilight opened her mouth to say something, but I beat her to it by nodding my head again. Her mother just continued to stare at me, clearly at a loss what to do next. Twilight looked back and forth between us, clearly nervous. Finally, her mother spoke again. I understand that we've met before, but I didn't believe that I have actually introduced myself. She shifted uncomfortably from hoof to hoof before she slowly held out one to me. My name is Twilight Velvet. It's a pleasure to meet you. I glanced down at her hoof before reaching out and gently grasping it in my hand. She flinched slightly as my fingers wrapped around her hoof, but she didn't shy away. Squeaking and her hoof softly, I knelt down and gave it a quick peck before releasing it and straightening back up. Twilight just stood there, frozen, with her hoof still in midair. There was a small blush on her face as she gaped up at me with an odd expression. I didn't know he was so chivalrous, she said, turning slowly to look at her daughter, who was staring up at me with the same odd expression, her mouth hanging open. What? I asked, raising an eyebrow at her. She closed her mouth with a click before shaking her head. Nothing, it's just that that's not a very common greeting, is all, she said. It's typically only meant for nobles and royalty. I glanced back and forth between the two mirrors before shrugging. I regret nothing, I said, crossing my arms across my chest. Twilight rolled her eyes at me while her mother giggled at my antics. Though I don't think she could understand why I had said. Oh, I can tell you he's gonna be a fun one, she said, burning before. Damn it. I thought it was burning. She said before turning and waving us inside. No point looking on the doorstep. Come on in, you two. With a smile, Twilight headed in after her mother, with me following close behind. Dinner's not quite ready yet, Velvet called back over her shoulder as she headed towards the kitchen. But we have snacks in the family room. I kicked off my sandals and placed them beside the door, just out of the way of the walkway, so that they didn't chip anyone. With that, I followed Twilight out of the hallway and into the family room. As we crossed the threshold of the room, we were instantly hit by a wave of heat. There was a fire crackling away in the fireplace, providing a warmth for the entire room as the flames shot up in the chimney. 3 ponies were already in the room when Twilight and I arrived. Shining Armor sat on the couch, his foreleg resting on the armrest. Cadence was splayed out across the rest of the couch, her wings hanging lazily by her sides. She was laying on her back, her head in Shining Armor's lap. Both were chuckling at some joke that had been told earlier, warm smiles on their faces. I blinked, staring at Cadence. It wasn't that noticeable, but she looked slightly bigger than when I had last saw her. But when I looked again, I figured I had just been seeing things. Across from them was a unicorn stallion. I had never seen him before, puffing away on a pipe. He had a gruff appearance, his coat a medium shade of blue, and his short mane and a wavy tail were a darker shade. Golden eyes sparkled as he laughed along with others. On his flank were 2 crescent moons, one nestled inside the other, facing opposite directions. As he shifted in his seat, I could see muscles ripping underneath his fur, giving him a muscular, athletic look. Several small scars were scattered across his body, especially around his face. The horn on his head was long, with chips and scratches running across its surface. As we entered the room, all the laughter ceased as heads turned to look at us, or more specifically, me. Suddenly the center of attention, I froze, doing my best impression of a deer caught in the headlights. Beside me, Twilight shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at her staring family members. As all 3 of them continued to stare at me, I started to feel a little anxious. I wonder if I could make it to the train station before they caught me, I thought as I began to sweat. I didn't like the intense gazes being sent my way. Eventually, the stallion, who I was assuming was Twilight's dad, reached up slowly and removed the pipe from his mouth. Rolling his tongue around the inside of his mouth, his golden eyes narrowed. When he spoke, his voice was deep and gravelly. Damn, son. What in Celestia's name happened to your eye? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Twilight stiffen. Hit my eye on a doorknob. Hit my eye on a doorknob, I replied automatically without thinking. A blank look on my face. His ear twitched as I signed. It was a few seconds before I realized that he probably couldn't understand me. I blinked in confusion as he burst out laughing, causing Shining and Cadence to look over at him instead. I looked down at Twilight with a questioning look. She looked just as surprised as me. Hit your eyeball on a doorknob, did ya? He laughed, his eyes dancing with merriment. Oh, I can tell I'm gonna have a great time with you. Giving me a big grin, he continued to chuckle as he placed the stem of the pipe back into his mouth. Dad, you know hoof language? Twilight asked, looking after her dad incredulously. Since when? One of our squad members a couple of years back was deaf. Whole squad had to learn it in order to communicate. I'm a bit rusty, but I can still understand it fairly well. Turning his attention back to me, Twilight's dad took a long pull on the pipe before speaking. So, this is the human that Princess was making a big deal about. Wait, what? So this is the human the Princess was making a big deal about. She had on my squad moving all across Equestria to trying to find that Celestia damned group. He said, a smile still on his face. Putting on the pipe again, he blew a quick smoke ring out of the corner of his mouth. Well, I would normally be hard-pressed right now to trust you, let alone like you, son, he said. But seeing as it was partly because of you that I received such a large bonus for running everywhere from Las Pegasus to Philadelphia, I think I can make an exception. Leaning further back into his chair, he gave me a brief look over, pulling the pipe out of his mouth and smiling. I'm Colonel Nightlight of the Royal Guard. Search and seizure? I want to say seizure, but it probably isn't that. Branch, to be precise. So, pleasure to meet ya. Max, I signed, slowly moving further into the room. Twilight sticking by my side. You've caused quite a stir around here, boy. You've set a lot of wheels in motion. In fact, several laws have already been passed to crack down on human handlers to make sure that they aren't doing anything illegal or unethical, Nightlight said as I removed my bags and placed them beside the couch. Removing the notebook and charcoal as I did so, I walked over and sat down in front of the fire, placing hers. Wait, excuse me? I removed my saddlebags and placed them back on the couch. Removing the notebook and charcoal as I did so, I walked over and sat down in front of the fire, placing her saddlebags next to mine. Okay. Twilight quickly ran over and gave her dad a hug. Hey there, Pumpkin, he said, ruffling her mane as they broke apart. How you doing? I'm doing well. I'm doing very well, thanks, Twilight said, kissing her dad on the cheek. Turning, she trotted over and sat down beside me, snuggling up against my side. This earned her a confused look from Cadence, shining armor, however, was looking at me. So you're intelligent, he finally asked. I nodded, never breaking eye contact. You've been intelligent the whole time, another nod. Even when we met the first time, flipping open my notebook, I quickly scratched out a message before then up. Both Cadence and Shannon had to lean in slightly to read it. Ready for round 2, you big wuss? Cadence giggled as Shannon glared at me. I was taking it easy on you last time because I wasn't sure how you react, he said. I just nodded my head, giving him a mocking, knowing look. It's true. Slowly, a large smile spread across my face. Everyone but Twilight flinched at the sight. Okay, said Cadence, sitting up. That's pretty creepy. Well, screw you too. That was great. I love it. It's like staring into the face of a predator. What? It's like staring into the face of a predator. Nightlight murmured, shifting in his chair. I just shook with the sound, causing all of them to flinch again. I continued to snicker as I realized the situation I was in. I'm having dinner with a member of the opposite gender's family. The last time this happened, I was being stared down by my girlfriend's father. But laughter continued to grow in volume until Twilight finally slapped me over the back of the wing. Stop that, she said, giving me a stern glare. You're making every pony nervous. I gave her a sheepish smile before sticking out my tongue. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Cadence cock her head to the side as she looked at us. She chewed on her bottom lip as her eyes darted between us. Don't stick that tongue out if you aren't going to use it for anything useful, said a voice from the doorway. Looking over, I saw Velvet standing there, smirking at me. I looked at her in confusion until she gave me a suggestive wiggle of her eyebrows. I raised my eyebrows when I realized what she was implying, a smile tugging on my lips. I think I might actually like these ponies. Mom! Twilight whined, looking at her mother in horror. Her face red. I had to suppress my laughter at the look on her face. It was too adorable. My sides shook with mirth as Nightlight snorted, a cloud of smoke escaping his mouth. That's funny, he said, eyes twinkling mischievously. She said the same thing to me during our honeymoon, though she also told me where I could stick it as well. Oh, shit. Shit just got weird now. As both Twilight and Shining looked at their parents in horror, I was trying my hardest to keep my laughter in. This was just too good. You were a quick learner, though, Velvet said as she walked further into the room. Now, I wasn't sure if it was the situation or something else entirely, but at the moment I couldn't hold my back any longer. I burst out laughing, clutching my sides as I walked back and forth. Ever since I arrived in Equestria, I haven't really laughed hard. Sure, I've chuckled, snickered, chortled, and even giggled, but I had never actually had a good long laugh. Now here, I was rolling on the ground while laughing hard. A good old belly laugh. Tears rolled down my face as I clutched at my sides, gasping for breath. Oh, I love this. After several minutes, I slowly began to calm down. I sat up, wiping tears from my eyes as I continued to chuckle softly to myself. As I looked up, I saw that everyone was staring at me with a variety of expressions. Shannon was looking at me nervously, as though he wasn't sure what to think. Nightlight and Velvet were both looking at me, amused smiles on their faces. Twilight was staring at me, her mouth hanging open slightly, a small blush on her face. Her eyes sparkled slightly as she gazed at me. The only one not staring at me was Cadence. She was too busy staring intently at Twilight. A knowing smile slowly spreading across her face as her purple eyes narrowed. I like him, Nightlight said, suddenly putting his pipe back into his mouth. He's a keeper. I was just thinking the same thing, Velvet said, looking at me with a smile. Although that laugh of his would take some getting used to, I've never heard anything like it before. She continued to look at me for a moment before blinking. Her smile softened slightly. I was just coming to tell you that dinner will be ready in around 15 minutes. With that, she turned and headed back into the kitchen. Well, while you're waiting for dinner to finish up, can I interest any pony in some snacks? Nightlight asked, getting up from the chair and walking over to the table in the corner that was covered in a variety of foods. We have chips, carrots, crackers, cheese. Cheese, I asked, pricking up slightly. Back on Earth, I was a cheese fanatic. I loved all kinds of cheese, and I could never truly pick a favorite. It was the fact alone that earned me the horrible nickname Max and Cheese. Back in the 5th grade. Yep, Nightlight said. We got Kashkevo. God bless, I'm gonna butcher these words so hard. Casio Cavallo, Axaca, Coti cheese, Coti Jack cheese, Farmer cheese, Pencunning cheese, Swiss. My mouth was watering as he continued to list off the different cheeses on the table. Twilight just rolled her eyes. Sir, I said, eventually cutting him off in the list. You had me at cheese. Standing up, I walked over, stared down at the little slice of heaven, a happy smile on my face. Nightlight looked up at me as surprised. You like cheese? He asked, as if he could believe such a thing. Do I like cheese? I taunted, giving him an amused look. Sir, you'd be hard pressed to find cheese back home that I haven't tried. A look of pure joy across his face when I told him that. Oh, don't tell me they have things in common, because this is just dope. I love it. Splendid, he said. He patting me on the back. At least some pony I can have cheesy discussions with. Leaning in, he pulled me down and stage whispered in my ear. Just between you and me, most ponies don't like cheese just by itself. It has to be in or on something like pizza. It's so hard to find some pony that appreciates cheese for the cheese. Because it's weird, Dad, Shining called from the couch. I still don't understand how you like that stuff plain. But you have cheese in your fridge, I said, looking at Twilight. I've seen it. Yeah, it's for cooking. You know, putting it on pizza, omelets, and stuff like that. Not for eating, she said, scrunching up her face. Oh, I paused, just looking down at Twilight. On a completely unrelated note, you're out of cheese. With that, I turned my attention back to the table, glancing over the different cheeses. I reached for one that was yellow and gold. I was assuming that this was the Coti Jack cheese. Are you sure about this? Twilight asked as I picked a large piece of cheese up. There's a good possibility that this isn't the same as the cheese you have back home. She blinked before lowering her head and grumbling. I can't believe I'm talking about the differences in cheese between worlds. I just ignored her, popping the piece of cheese into my mouth and chewing. My eyes widened and a smile spread across my face. This is more delicious than the cheese back home. As I remembered happily while I chewed, Twilight just shook her head and wandered off, muttering weirdos under her breath as I reached for a second piece. Nightlight smiled happily. Ah, a stallion after me own heart, he said, placing a hoof against his chest. Twilight, he called after his retreating daughter. I fully approve of this young man. Consider him part of the family. Twilight didn't turn her around, her ear flicking slightly in acknowledgement as she walked into the kitchen. He then stood quickly from the couch and followed after Twilight, shortly after Shining headed into the kitchen as well. Chewing on my fifth piece of heaven, I turned to look at Nightlight. So what kind of recipes do you have for cheese? Sadly, not many, he said, hanging his head dramatically. Not enough ponies care enough for that many recipes to exist. It's a shame, really. Aw, this makes me sad. Like, every food we have here is just, like, randomly gets split into other meals, and it's great. Anyways, you ever tried placing slices of cheese on some chips and heating it up, melting the cheese? Actually, he said, his face lighting up, I've heard that they do that in Mexico. Of course they do, I thought, repressing the urge to roll my eyes. I facepalmed at the horrible pun. Instead, I picked up another piece of cheese and placed it in my mouth. As I chewed, idea popped into my head. Turning slowly, I waved my fingers smilingly at Nightlight as a slow smile spread across my face. I might have a recipe for you, I sighed, heading over to the fireplace to get my notebook. Nightlight looked at it curiously as I flipped it open. What do you need that for? He asked as he levitated a piece of cheese over for himself. Hoof language doesn't have all the right words, I explained before I began to write. Deep fried cheese curds, take some flour, baking powder, and salt and stir it together with eggs and milk. Coat some cheese curds with it before dipping them in heated oil for 1 minute. Tearing out the page, I handed it to him before picking up another piece of cheese. I shouldn't be eating all of this cheese, but I can't help it. It's too delicious. This actually sounds pretty good, Nightlight said, looking over the note. I'll have to try this the next time I get. Ha! I know I have a recipe from another world, he said with a loud barking laugh. Rolling the note up, he walked out of the room. A couple of seconds later, he returned minus the note. Sorry, he said, flashing me a quick smile. Went to put it with my other recipes. I didn't want to lose it. Just then a shout came from the kitchen. Dinner's ready! I had just taken several steps forward before my way was blocked by Nightlight. He looked up at me, the cheerful expression on his face replaced by one of stone. Oh, great. This is like a girlfriend scenario going on. A quick word before we settle down to eat, he said, his tone steely. I'm a soldier boy. I've been out in the field and seen many things I probably shouldn't have. I fought with griffins, minotaurs, and changelings. Humans, too. I swallowed nervously as he stared up at me, the warmth gone from his eyes. Now I'm telling this to scare you, he continued, stepping back slightly. I wasn't lying when I said I approved of you. However, I want to make one thing clear right here and right now. Smoke billowed out of his mouth as he sighed heavily, the end of his pipe glowing slightly as he pulled on it. Twilight is my little girl, regardless if she is an alicorn or not, and I'll be damned if anything bad happens to her. You do anything at all, that could bring her harm, I will break you. Is that understood? I stared at him for several seconds before my gaze became a glare. First Celestia and now him. I growled. I was getting really annoyed with the ponies, assuming that I was the one that was going to do something. I had lost my eye and nearly died because of these ponies. Nightlight apparently saw the angry look in my eyes because he took a step back looking uneasy. I'm sick and tired of you ponies assuming that I'm some mindless creature that could snap at any given minute, I said, advancing towards the unicorn. I've been kidnapped, forced to fight in a pit, and nearly killed. The pit fight even cost me my right eye. Bending down, I showed my face into his, snarling slightly as I did so. I'm going to make this very clear right here, right now. You can even tell Celestia this if you want, because I'm pretty sure that she has you reporting to her. I have no intention of hurting any of you ponies, but that doesn't mean that I'll just lie down and take whatever you dish out. If I have to defend myself, I will, with force if necessary. That being said, I straightened back up, putting on a neutral expression. Putting a neutral expression. Twilight is very, very important to me, and I have no plans to allow any harm to come to her. She may be your daughter, but she's mostly the reason that I stayed in Equestria, and I'm willing to defend her no matter the cost. I finished with a huff, staring down at Nightlight. He stared back at me, a blank expression on his face. He's probably so shocked to hear that shit. He's like, what? He stayed that way for several tense moments, and for a brief second, I thought that perhaps I had gone too far, but then suddenly a small smile slowly spread across his face. Wait, where am I? Damn it. Boy, you just continue to amaze me. I've seen members of the Royal Guard with less backbone than you. His smile grew and the warmth slowly returned to his eyes. I'm glad that we have an understanding, because after seeing that look in your eye, I'd just be a little hesitant to come to blows with you. I haven't seen conviction like that in a long time. There is just one thing I'm curious about, though, he said, cocking his head to the side, his eyes narrowing. How did you know that Celestia wanted me to give her a report about tonight? I blinked several times before a large smile crossed my face. You just told me. Nightlight eyes widened and his mouth opened in a small "oh" before he threw back his head and laughed. Years of keeping the crown's secrets safe from enemies, and I'm outsmarted by a human. He laughed, nearly choking on his pipe, which immediately went out. Boy, if you keep this up, I'm going to have to talk to Twilight about having you move in here with us. I could do with entertainment. I wasn't just a guest in the dark, I informed him as he calmed down. I have the feeling that she doesn't exactly trust me. It's not that she doesn't trust you, Nightlight said, relighting his pipe with a flash of his chipped horn. She's just rather protective of Twilight and wants to make sure that nothing bad happens to her. She's almost like a second mother to her. Don't let it bug you too much. She also values Twilight's opinion, and Twilight speaks very highly of you, but enough about that. I do believe that dinner is ready. I don't know about you, but I'm starving. I need some food in my stomach before I waste away. Turning he headed towards the kitchen door. Towards the kitchen. A trail of smoke following behind him as he walked. I stood there staring after him for a moment or two before smirking to myself. I like him, I thought to myself as I made my way after him. Alright, that was beautiful. We're not done yet, but we're going into Twilight's perspective. I'm guessing this says, like, right after they talked about the cheese nonsense. Anyways, weirdos, Twilight muttered under her breath as she turned and walked away. Her head hung low. She wandered towards the kitchen. Whom makes such a big deal out of cheese? A stallion of my own heart, she heard her dad laugh behind her. Twilight, I fully approve of this young man. Consider him part of the family. She rolled her eyes at this, but a small smile touched her lips nonetheless. I'm glad Dad likes him, she thought as she entered the kitchen. And to think all that worrying for nothing. A wonderful smell hit Twilight's nose as she inhaled, making her mouth water. Glad enough, she found her mother standing by the stove, stirring a large bubbling pot. Velvet glanced over her shoulder at her daughter, a surprised expression on her face. Twilight, what are you doing in here? Is everything alright? Twilight just smiled at her as she took another sniff. Dad just found out that Max likes cheese as much as he does, so I thought I would come in here and get away from that. Oh dear. Her mother laughed as she shook her head. If there is one thing your dad loves more than family, it's his cheese. So what are you making that smell so good? Twilight asked, walking over to stir into the pot. 3-bean chili. Velvet said, still stirring the pot. It's got some red bell peppers in it, as well as onions, red peppers, peeled butternut, squash, tomatoes, pinto beans. Canili beans and red kidney beans. I accidentally added a bit too much salt, but we'll just see where that takes us. She winked at her daughter, causing Twilight to roll her eyes. Mom, humans are infected by salt as much as ponies are, Twilight chided. She was going to say more, but stopped when she felt some pony drape a wing over her back. Turning, she saw Cadence giving her a rather creepy smile. Twilight? Oh, what is Cadence assuming? I feel like Cadence, the pony of love, knows what... I'm pretty sure she knows what's going on with her and him. Pretty sure, even though like they technically don't act upon it, and they probably won't, because Max is just staying because of Twilight, apparently. That's confirmation right there. Twilight, may I speak with you for a second? She asked, tugging at Twilight with her wing. She pulled her over to the far corner, away from her mother and the stove, glancing over her shoulder to see if Velvet was listening in at all. She looked at Twilight and grinned. Okay, what's up, Cadence? What you doing? Okay, Spill, what's going on here? I don't know what you're talking about, Twilight said, confused. Cadence's smile just grew and she chuckled, as if Twilight had said something funny. What's going on between you and Max, she asked. Twilight's breath caught her in her throat. Nothing, she said loudly, taking a step back. She winced and glanced back at her mother, but Velvet didn't seem to hear her outburst. Turning back to Cadence, she hissed under her breath. Why would you think something is going on between us? There's clearly nothing going on between us. We're just friends. Yes, that's it, just friends. Yes, that's it, friends. Oh, come on, Cadence giggled, wiggling her eyebrows at the smaller unicorn. I saw how you were looking at him. I know love when I see it, Twilight. You can't hide it from me. Yeah, I love him, just like I love Spike. What's the big deal? Twilight, Cadence hissed, shaking her head and smirking. There's a sibling love, then there's this. Twilight opened her mouth to argue, but Cadence cut her off by shoving a hoof in her mouth. Twilight, come on, you were looking at him like a school filly looks at her crush, especially when he was laughing at his flank off. You were practically drooling over him. You can't tell me that was sisterly love. Twilight gaped at her, her face shading up as she blushed horribly. Whenever her friends heard Max laugh, they always said it was sounding extremely creepy to them, almost animalistic. Applejack described it by saying that it kind of reminded her of a timberwolf's bark. Even Sunnybreeze had said that she couldn't get used to Max's chuckling. Twilight, on the other hand, liked the sound of his laughter immensely, even if she never heard more than a chuckle out of him at any given time. However, when she saw him rolling around on the floor, laughing that deep, guttered laugh of his, her opinion had changed. She didn't just like his laugh anymore. She loved it. She wanted to hear more of it. She needed to hear more of it. But Max is mostly making you laugh half the time, Twilight. I'm pretty sure you're not gonna get that much out of him. That loud laugh had something that a pony's laugh just didn't have. Something that sent shivers down the alicorn's spine and caused her heart to flutter and beat wildly in her chest. I'm pretty sure that's just because you love the thing that came from it, where the laugh came from. I'll have to find out what he thinks is funny and see if I can get him to laugh like that again, she thought absentmindedly as Shining Armor walked in and went over to talk to Velvet. Shaking her head, the younger princess returned her attention to Cadence. There's nothing going on, she said quickly, her ears playing backwards. Cadence just laughed softly, giving her a soft smile. Twilight, you can't deny it, she said, placing a hoof on Twilight's shoulder. You're in love with him, aren't you? Twilight swallowed thickly, but couldn't bring herself to contradict her sister-in-law. Lowering her head, Twilight sighed in defeat. This just caused Cadence to squeal happily, earning her an odd look from Shining. Oh, this is so exciting, she giggled. Little Twilight is in love. Oh, I've been waiting for this day for a while, so does he know? Have you told him yet? Twilight winced at the questions and glanced away. No, I haven't, she confessed. I haven't had a chance to tell him yet. Besides, I don't think it'll work. Cadence's smile vanished, and she looked at Twilight in confusion. Why? She asked, tilting her head to the side. Her eyes suddenly widened, and she gasped, covering her mouth with her hooves. Oh no, he doesn't have his eyes on another human, does he? Oh no, does he? He doesn't have his eyes on another human, does he? Twilight shook her head, refusing to look her in the eye. Cadence blinked in confusion. Another pony? Again? Twilight shook her head. Cadence just deadpan at that. Does he have his eyes on another creature? Another shake of the head. Cadence's face scrunched up as she gave Twilight an incredulous look. Then why wouldn't it work? He's a human, Twilight sighed unhappily. She blinked in confusion as Cadence began to laugh. Glancing up, Twilight looked at her, trying to figure out what was so funny. You're gonna have a relationship, apparently. Okay, this is what Cadence is telling you. He's intelligent. You're intelligent. Boom. Also, Max pretty much thinks you're pretty in some way or form. Okay? That's what's bothering you? Cadence asked, shaking her head as she laughed. Twilight, I'm astounded by you. What? That human in there talking to your dad about cheese and making both of your parents laugh? Do you consider him a mindless animal? She asked. No, Twilight cried angrily. No, he is not an animal. He's an intelligent, caring person. Then what's the problem? Is it because he's a different species? Because interspecies relationships are a pretty common thing? What? Because interspecies relationships are a pretty common thing, you know. We have them in the Crystal Empire, although that one mare with a Yeti that goes around calling every pony George and trying to pet them is pretty creepy. She shivered and stared off into the distance, a pained look on her face as she rubbed her chest. She muttered something that sounded strangely like normal hugging or petting or squeezing. And no, it's not that, the young princess said, chewing on her bottom lip. Cadence seemed to snap out of her trance and turn her attention back to Twilight. It's just that he's a human. She tried to put emphasis on the word to get her point across. Cadence just looked at her in confusion. I don't see what the problem is. Twilight sighed heavily, not really wanting to have this conversation. To the rest of Equestria, he looks like a human, a mindless animal. I know he isn't, and you know he isn't, but that's what everybody else would see. What would they think of me if everybody found out that their new princess was in love with a human? There's already a bunch of nobles trying to find out any reason to strip me of my title. If word got out about this, there would probably be a line of ponies running out to the castle, all petitioning for Princess Celestia to remove me from power because of it. Plus, what would my friends say? Okay, your friends will be supportive as fuck, okay? Let's just say that. Rainbow will be a little jealous. So will Applejack. Probably Fluttershy too. But they'll still be supportive of this, okay? You just pissing me off, Twilight, if you just mentioned your friends wouldn't be supportive of you, okay? Not sure about the rest of this land of equines, but I'm pretty sure your friends would... Rarity knows that... Rarity, like, literally knows that Max is, like, sort of interested in you. Okay, sort of. Just saying. Alright, plus, what will my friends say? Rarity didn't even like him until he saved her sister. What if they found out disgusting and didn't... What if they found it disgusting and didn't want to be my friends anymore? What would mom and dad say? What? She was silenced by Cadence placing a hoof against her lips. Twilight glanced up and saw that she was smiling at her warmly. Oh yeah, Twilight was literally like just snuggling against him in the fireplace. I forgot about that little moment. Twilight, Cadence said, her voice soft. When it comes to love, don't let other ponies dictate who you can and can't love. Max is an intelligent creature, just like you and me. Hey, he's smarter than some ponies out there. I know that many ponies would find it scandalous, especially the nobles. Why? I don't know, since most of them are rooting their humans anyways. She got a sour look on her face, but it soon replaced with a smile when she looked back at Twilight. It shouldn't matter what others think, and I'm pretty sure that your friends would be supportive. As for your parents, well, a loud laugh came from the family room. Twilight's dad finding something humorous. This just caused Cadence's smile to grow slightly, and she nodded her head smugly. I think that they would be overjoyed to see you happy, no matter who it is you're with, she said. Just listen to what your heart tells you, and act on it, I guess, Twilight said, glancing off to the side. But I don't want to scare Max away. I don't think that is something you have to worry about, Cadence said, draping a wing over her. I've seen how he looks at you as well. There's kindness in his eyes that I have rarely seen, especially in ones who... I've seen how he looks at you as well. There's kindness in his eyes that I have rarely seen, especially in one who's had to endure such hardship. He cares for you deeply. Hey, according to my aunts, part of the reason he stayed in Equestria was because of you. He gave up going home to his old life just to continue to stay in Equestria with you. I highly doubt that anything you could do drive him away. Just be yourself, and I'm sure that everything will just work out just fine. Twilight looked up and gave her a small smile. Feel better? Hey, she wouldn't feel so down if she didn't bring this up. I gotta tell you, Cadence, she wouldn't feel so down right now if you didn't bring this up. If you haven't brought this up, okay? Feel better? Cadence asked. Yeah, I do actually. Thanks, Cadence. Twilight murmured, nuzzling her quickly. As they broke apart, her mom called into the other room. Dinner's ready. Turning, she looked over at them. Alright, you two, into the dining room. Shining's there, setting the table. Don't worry, Cadence whispered to her as they walked, bumping Twilight with her flank. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to send me a letter. I'm always happy to help. Just take it slow, and you'll have him eating out of your hooves in no time. All I gotta say, Cadence, like, I feel like you're telling her to take it slow, which she's been doing, but she's been thinking about everybody's opinion on the matter. Like, I'm pretty sure like 1/10 of Ponyville knows and would seem normal, especially to her friends, to like the nurses and doctors that worked on him for being a crazy dumb fucking idiot that just literally went into the forest like while he was in recovery. I'm pretty sure the town would be shocked from that information and all that nonsense, but I'm pretty sure they wouldn't care. I stared down at the bowl of food in front of me. We're back to Max, by the way. I stared down at the bowl of food in front of me, my head cocked to the side. Steam wafted up from its contents, and a pleasant aroma tickled my nostrils, causing my mouth to water. I knew what it was, and even though it didn't have meat, it still looked delicious. I was just going to stare at it Or are you gonna eat it? Asked Twilight, who was sitting next to me. I glanced over at her, only to see her halfway finished with her own bowl. I just raised an eyebrow and sniffed hoftily at her. Food this delectable must be savored. Yeah, well, you savor it any longer, and I'll have to separate you two, she said, waving her spoon at me before spooning another helping of chili into her mouth. I grinned at that before picking up a chunk of cheese I had brought with me from the other room. Grabbing my knife, I proceeded to cut the cheese into smaller chunks. Before tossing them all into my bowl and stirring, I smiled as the cheese slowly began to melt, mixing with chili. Glancing up, I saw that everyone was looking at me with curious expressions on their faces. You're putting cheese in your chili? Cadence asked, tilting her head to the side. That seems like an interesting combination. I don't think I've seen anybody do that. I just shrugged before picking up my spoon and began to eat. As I lifted the spoon to my mouth, strings of melted cheese hung from the middle. So Max, Nightlight said as we continued to eat, anything exciting you're looking forward to in the upcoming weeks? I lifted up my mouth full of chili. I looked between Nightlight, Twilight, and the rest of the family, trying to figure out the best way to communicate with everyone. Writing would take too long, as a notebook would have been passed around the table. Go ahead and use hoof language, Twilight said with a smile, seemingly realizing that what I was thinking. I'll translate for you, it's no problem. I gave her a grateful smile before swallowing the food in my mouth with a loud gulp. Well, from what I hear from Twilight and her friends, Nightmare Night is coming up shortly. I began after placing my spoon into my bowl. From the description they gave me, it sounds pretty surprisingly similar to a holiday we have back on my world. Since I've been cooped up in the library for so long, I figured that I might actually try and make a costume and possibly even partake in the festivities. Any point in particular you wanted to do something with? Cadence asked, a small smirk on her face beside me. Twilight shot her an alarmed look. Well, I was hoping to do something fun with Twilight here, I replied, avoiding Cadence's eyes. Nightlight had to translate for me because Twilight was too busy staring at me with agape. Well, wait, me? You wanted to do something with me? She stuttered, blinking rapidly. Well, why? You're fun to hang out with, I replied with a shrug. I like hanging out with you. A blush spread across her face, and she buried her face in her bowl. Across the table, Cadence's smile grew. Cadence is just like, let's go. Well, you aren't the only one who's excited for Nightmare Night, Nightlight said. Princess Luna has been prancing around gushing about it. She's talking the ears off of the night guard. It's actually quite the sight to see. She's like a filly in a toy store. I frowned slightly as I tried to picture that. From what I've seen of Luna so far, she was rather reserved and collected. I couldn't see her running around and giggling with glee. She'll be visiting Ponyville again this year, Nightlight continues, sipping at his drink. So you'll both probably see her. Also, she said that she has something to tell you, he said, looking at me. But she also said that it was going to be a surprise, so I have no clue what you expect from her. Nothing bad, though, he added, seeing my alarmed expression. Twilight and I just glanced at each other, my eyebrows raised. Well, that just made things more interesting, Twilight commented, while not in agreement. I wonder what the surprise is. I just shrugged and returned to my chili. We'll find out come Nightmare Night. We continued to make small talk as we ate. The gentle clatter of silverware filling the room. I was still trying to figure out what Luna wanted to talk about. I was content just to stare into my bowl, listening to others talk. I was snapped out of my thoughts when something small struck my cheek. Blinking, I glanced down at the object and saw that it was a chili bean. I stared at it for several seconds before looking up. Everyone was busy talking about some big event coming up. I think I caught the word gala in there somewhere, but nobody seemed to notice that I had just been struck by a projectile. Nobody, that is, except for shining armor. What is shining doing? Do you want to go for round two? Begin round two? The stallion in question was staring at me, a triumphant smirk on his face. As I made eye contact with him, the smirk grew wider before he flicked another bean at me with his magic. The bean struck me on the other cheek, this time before falling to the table. I narrowed my eyes at my assaulter. He dares to attack me? That fascist pig. This is an insult to both me and my people, and I shall not be tolerated. Steadily lowering my spoon into my bowl, I scooped up 3 beans that were covered in melted cheese. Still keeping my movements slow and deliberate, I raised the spoon to my mouth, placing the edge of my spoon in my mouth. I pushed down on the spoon, taking careful aim. I opened my mouth, releasing the spoon and launching my own salvo towards the enemy. Shining never even saw it coming. My attack hit him right on the nose. The melted cheese causing the beans to stick to his muzzle. He flinched slightly before glaring at me. I just smirked at him, sticking my tongue out quickly. That earned myself a bean to the nose. As I rubbed the chili out on my nose, I placed my spoon on the table. The head facing Shining Armor, picking up a small chunk of cheese. I placed it on the end of the spoon closest to me, adjusting the spoon slightly. I lined it up perfectly with my intended target. Quickly, I slammed my fist down on the head of the spoon, Coughing loudly, the cheese flew through the air and landed with a splash in Shining's glass. He glared daggers at me as I continued to cough, trying to mask my laughter. Twilight looked at me in concern. Are you alright? She asked. I nodded, pointing at my bowl of chili. Spicy, I replied before returning my attention to Shining, who was trying to fish the piece of cheese out of his drink without drawing attention to what he was doing. Twilight just shrugged before turning back to Cadence and picking up where she had left off. After he had fished the soggy piece of cheese out of his cup, Shining placed it on his own spoon, an evil smile spreading across his face. Grasping his utensil in his magic, he raised it into the air slightly before giving it a quick flick, sending the soggy piece of dairy flying towards me. What if Twilight's mom would see this? I feel like Twilight's mom is like just watching this whole dinner just transpire and just enjoy it. Moving quickly, I pushed my fork off the table. As it clattered to the floor, I ducked under the table quickly. The projectile flew over my head and then hit the wall with a splat. I peeked over the edge of the table, smirking at Shining Armor. He just glowered at me before lowering his head and huffing into his bowl. I hope you plan on cleaning that up, Shining, Velvet said suddenly, not looking up from her meal. Everyone turned to look at Shining, who had a shocked look on his face. I threw my fist into the air, a victorious smile on my face that earned me a confused look from both Twilight and Cadence, although I think Nightlight gave me a quick wink. But Mom, Shining began, pointing a hoof at me before his mother caught him off the guard. Shining Armor, don't you dare try and blame your antics on that poor innocent human, Velvet scolded, giving her son a disapproving look. I was biting on my lip, trying to stop myself from laughing at the look on Shining's face. Besides, I do believe that it's now 2-1. Max is the lead, Velvet continued, returning to her chili. Really, Shining, I thought you would be far better than this. You used to be the captain of the guard. How embarrassing. Wait, he used to be? Why isn't he any longer? How embarrassing, she tutted. I couldn't help any more that comment combined with Shining's horrified look, along with Cadence and Twilight's looks of utter confusion, sent me over the edge. Grabbing my sides, I fell out of my chair and rolled out onto the table, hollering with laughter. I heard Shining grumbling something above me, which only made me laugh harder. Which I had finally calmed down. I emerged from underneath the table, sitting back down on my seat. I glanced over at Twilight. She was staring off into the distance, a huge dopey smile plastered on her face. Across from her, Cadence was giggling into her hoof, as her face red as she looked at Twilight. I just looked back and forth between the two mirrors before shrugging and returning to my chili. As I ate, Shining glared playfully at me. This isn't over, he hissed, ignoring. Shining, Velvet said warningly, not looking up. Sorry, Mummy. Sorry, Bobby. I nearly choked on my mouthful of food, earning another glare from Shining. I love this. This is the best, like, freaking just getting back together moment. Like, come on. I think I ate too much, Twilight groaned as she collapsed onto the couch. Rolling onto her back, she held her destined stomach in her hose, her tongue lolling out of her mouth comically. I smiled at her antics. I sat in front of the fireplace, enjoying the warmth of the crackling flames. We had all retired to the family room after dinner, Nightlight stroking the fire back to life. He was now sitting back in his chair, happily puffing away on his pipe. Velvet was sitting in the other chair in the room, a book held in her magic, while a pair of reading glasses were perched on her nose. As she read, she would write little notes on a notebook placed on the armrest. Shining and Cadence were both sitting on the couch with Twilight. Cadence was leaning against her husband. As she snuggled further into the couch, she winced and rubbed her back with a hoof. Are you okay, hun? Shining asked, looking at her in concern. She smiled at him, shaking her head. I'm fine. I've just been having a little back pain lately. Nothing a trip to the machine. Maswa? Won't fix. I picked up slightly, looking at Cadence curiously. As I watched, she winced again as she shifted on the couch. Sucking on the inside of my cheek, I sat up straighter and waved to her. When she glanced over at me, I waved her over, exchanging a quick look with Shining, who shrugged. She got up and trotted over to me. What's up? She asked as she approached. I didn't really reply. Instead, I reached over and grasped her forelegs in my hands with a soft tug. I put her down across my lap. She turned her head, looking back at me in confusion. What are you? She began before she stopped talking and let out a low moan as I dug my fingers into her back. As I kneaded my digits into her tense back muscle, she let out a happy sigh. She was a putty in my hands within seconds. This is better than hooves, she moaned as I worked my knuckles into her flesh in little circles, making sure not to push too hard. After working the knots out of one part of her back, I moved quickly to the next trouble spot. Cadence just murmured happily as I worked lazily, petting my knee with her forehoof. Every now and then, her eyes were rolled back in her head, and she had a large smile on her face. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight. I didn't know I was that good at this. I didn't know I was that good at this. Okay. I didn't know you knew how to give massages, Twilight said, sitting up. It could have been my imagination, but it looked like she was giving Cadence an envious look. My mom suffered from chronic high blood pressure and headaches. She found that the back massages helped alleviate the symptoms. I signed. Cadence whimpered, squirming in my lap. When I stopped my massage to respond to Twilight, I chuckled as I returned to the task at hand. I'm pretty sure that the high blood pressure led to the headaches, Twilight said, rubbing her chin with her hoof. Is it genetic? She asked before she yawned loudly. Yes, it was. Luckily, I did not inherit it from her, I replied before quickly returning the massaging cadence, so she couldn't complain. I wasn't sure how long we stayed like that, but I wasn't complaining. The crackle of the fire was relaxing, and combined with the heat, I was fighting to keep my eyes open, even as I continued Cadence's massage. I was pretty sure that she had fallen asleep a while ago. She had a happy smile on her face. I just started to nod off when the clock above the fireplace started to chime 9 o'clock. I blinked clearly, the sleep from my eye as I twisted around to try and see the clock face. I didn't know it was that late. I think it's about time to send you two on your way, Nightlight said, looking at me. The next train leaves in a half hour. I set my arms under Cadence, causing her to twitch slightly. Slowly standing up, I walked over and deposited her gently on the couch with Shining. He smiled as she subconsciously snuggled up against him. Picking up my saddlebags, I strapped it on before turning my attention to Twilight, only to find her fast asleep as well. The sight alone was enough to bring a large smile to my face, and I mentally odd. She was curled up much like a dog, her head tucked slightly under her wing. Her side rose and fell as she breathed gently, at quiet snores slowly escaping her mouth. I didn't realize she was that tired, I sighed softly, turning to look at Nightlight. He smiled down at his daughter, puffing on his pipe. We better wake her up, he said, chewing on the end of his pipe. We need to get you to the train station. He reached out a hoof to shake her awake, but I grabbed it. Shaking my head, I reached down and gently slipped an arm under the sleeping mirror. Lifting her up, I flipped her over slowly, cradling her in my arms. She snuggled deeper into my embrace with a happy murmur, seeking the warmth in my body provided. Wait, okay, so how are you holding her? Shaking my head, I reached down and gently slipped an arm under the sleeping mirror. Lifting her up, flipped her over slowly, cradling her in my arms. She snuggled deeper into my embrace with a happy murmur, she seeking the warmth my body provided. Turning, I looked at Nightlight. He just gave me an amused look, shaking his head slightly. Do you have train tickets already? I nodded, motioning with my head towards Twilight's saddlebags. Her dad picked them up in his magic, rifling through them until he pulled out the tickets. Shifting Twilight slightly in my arms, I held out a hand for the tickets. I'll take care of these, Nightlight said, lifting the saddlebags and placing them on his back. I'll escort you to the train station. Turning to glance at his wife, he continued, I shouldn't be too long. I'll just make sure they both get on the train to Ponyville safely before coming back. Velvet nodded before smiling up at me. Take care, Max, she said. It was nice to properly meet you, and I hope we'll see you again soon. I gave her a smile and a nod before returning and heading out into the hall. Shannon gave me a smile and a quick salute as I passed, sticking out his tongue afterwards. I just chuckled at that. As I slipped on my sandals, silently opened the front door with one quick glance around to make sure that we weren't forgetting anything. I followed the unicorn out of the house and into the night. I shivered in the chilling night air. The temperature was beginning to drop more and more as the autumn slowly came to a close. I couldn't even see my breath as I exhaled. Twilight whimpered slightly in her sleep, nuzzling closer to my chest as she sought warmth. I wrapped my arms tighter around her before turning to Nightlight. Come on, he said, heading off down the road. Train station is this way. I fell in step behind him, and we made our way down the empty street. There were a few houses that still had lights on, but for the most part, the majority of the homes we passed were dark. The ponies inside likely already asleep. As we walked, I couldn't help but stare up at the night sky. Thousands of stars filled the night, twinkling happily against the blackness. Even with the street lights on, the view was so much clearer than back on Earth. The moon was larger too, glowing brilliantly against the dark backdrop. As I stared up at the sky, Twilight nuzzled into my chest, inhaling deeply. Max, she whispered. I glanced down at her, blinking. A smile touched my lips as she continued to rub her head softly against my chest. A happy smile on her face. I looked up and saw the train station off in the distance. I adjusted Twilight into a more comfortable position. The smile still on my face. Warmth welled up in my chest as I looked down at her again. The feeling keeping back the nip of the chilly night air. Sweet dreams, Twilight, I thought, holding my dear friend close to my chest. Alright, who the heck is this? Some random... Okay, this is just a random pony, I think? I don't know where. I landed in front of the human with a thud. My wings flared wide to either side. Neither him nor the unicorn stallion walking next to him responded to my presence. They kept walking with smiles on their faces. I started up looking at Max as he continued to approach. Max, we need to talk, I said quickly, trotting forwards to meet him. It's important. He didn't acknowledge me nor what I had said. Instead, he continued to walk forward, passing through me with no resistance. I winced slightly at the sensation before sighing heavily as I turned and watched him walk off. I hate chaos magic. Flapping my wings, I flew around in front of him again, hovering a foot away from him as he walked. Keeping pace with his strides, I glared into his eyes, pouting slightly. Come on, talk to me, I whined, waving a hoof in front of his face. I know I can communicate with you. I've done it before. It's done nothing. What do you have to be dying in order for me to be able to talk to you? Not even a twitch? A swung? I swung a hoof at his face just for it to pass through him. Growling, I turned my attention to the elderly unicorn beside the human. Oi, Gramps, can you hear me? I asked. He didn't say anything, just continued to walk along. I'll take that as a no. A deep chuckle resounded around us, emanating from the direction of the royal gardens. I gritted my teeth, snarling slightly. Huffing, I turned my attention back to Max. He was currently looking down at the alicorn of magic. A warm smile on his face as he cradled her in his arms. I couldn't help but smile as well, the adoration in his gaze warming my heart. Sighing dejectedly, I flapped my wings and rose higher into the air. This is going to be harder than I thought, I grumbled as I flew off into the night light. The end. Who the heck is... this is the one person... one of the... I think she's a pony. I think she has wings. I'm guessing she's a Pegasus. I'm pretty sure it's not Sunny, because if it's Sunny, well, fuck. I'm pretty sure it's another Pegasus that apparently can use chaos magic or something. And Discord was laughing in the background, so this pony or mysterious entity wants to stop Discord, I'm guessing. And right now, he's like... I'm guessing the entity knows Max somehow. I'm guessing. I don't really know. But Max doesn't seem to notice or know the presence that he's talking. So, wait, he tried to talk to him. This thing tried to talk to him before. But it can only do it when... Wait, I've done it before. Why do you have to be dying in order for me to be able to talk to you? Well, I don't know. Probably to put more dramatic. Probably to put more... Okay, oh my god. My head is breaking apart right now. And that's just gonna get me questioning a lot of things tonight. Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching, doing the heck you guys do. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
100,000 stories have filled my head as I look for the answers in what I